So welcome everyone to our Zoomcast, Invisible Women in Sports. So like he said, I'm your host, Tolu Lope Omokore. You're probably like, what did she say? So it's Tolu Lope Omokore. Everybody calls me Tolu. So I'm currently a graduate assistant for the Institute for Sports and Social Justice. So previously, Invisible Women in Sports was on podcasts. We're still on podcasts as well. So now we're bringing it to the Zoomcast. So we will be discussing the pathways and challenges that the women in the industry have overcome and hear about the unique journeys through sports. We will challenge the status quo and action steps for aspiring women to become leaders in sports. We will also touch on the accomplishments, inspirations, and impression these women have imprinted in the sports world. With that said, I'm so excited to kick off our first episode with Amy Huchthausen, Commissioner of America East. Welcome, Amy.
Hi, good to be with you today.
Yes, thank you for joining us. So for those who do not know, Amy, this is not your first time you've spoken on Invisible Women in Sports, correct?
Yeah, you're giving me a second shot. I appreciate it.
And like the first time, you were the first host that we had back in 2018, so I really appreciate it. So too, if you could please tell us a little bit about yourself,
Yeah, well, I am, as Tolu mentioned, I'm the Commissioner of the America East Conference, which is a Division I athletic conference. We're based up here in Boston, Massachusetts. Currently, as many of you are staying at home and working from home. I have been commissioner of this league for 9 years, and before that worked at the NCAA national office and then several other Division I conference offices. So my career has entirely been in the college athletic space. It started on the regulatory side, like rules, compliance, interpretations. And then when I got this position, obviously, my duties expanded significantly.
Wow, you're amazing, Amy. So it's safe to say that things have changed from 2018 and now, especially with everything going on. We got the big COVID-19. So speaking of COVID, how are things with you in the conference, and what's the major challenges that you guys are facing?
Yeah, thankfully things are going well. Our staff, first and foremost, the folks that we work with every day, I work with every day. While we're scattered, we are still as connected as ever, and working on behalf of our membership to the best of our abilities. And thankfully, first and foremost, none of our staff have been impacted or been infected with the disease. So that's obviously very positive news. But as we work with our schools who are also managing their coaches and their staff, and especially their student athletes who are all scattered across the globe, it's very different time to be,
For sure.
And, we're trying to do our best to stay connected. One of the, I think, good things about this is that we have had more touch points with our membership than ever before as they try to deal with all of the issues and uncertainty that they're facing. Our job is really just to facilitate and guide and lead them when they're ready to tackle certain issues. And there's definitely been phases of this since the middle of March when, quote unquote, the world stopped from a sports perspective and everything shut down in college sports. And then all of the campuses went to fully remote. That first a week or two was an adjustment for everyone. For everyone. And so we were just trying to support them that way. And now it's really shifted towards looking ahead and trying to get ready as best we can for whatever might come with the rest of the summer and with the next academic year.
All right, thank you for that. So since we're speaking on challenges, what were some of the challenges in your life that you faced while growing up? And you're born in South Korea and raised in Minnesota. So if you can explain a little bit of how that went.
Yeah, it's been, and we spoke the other day as we were digging into this a little bit. And I think I alluded to this in the podcast that I did with you all as well. I was very fortunate. As you mentioned, I was adopted from South Korea. I was adopted when I was only 8 months old. So I remember nothing. I know nothing about those first 8 months of my life. So I grew up, as you mentioned, in Minnesota, and that's the experience I've had, and that's the only experience I know. And so when people ask from like an identity standpoint, just being candid and honest with you, I identify as an American. I don't identify primarily as a South Korean, even though visually that's what people see first.
Right.
I had a really great family that I grew up with. Let me pursue my interests and activities in sports as best I can, and I think that was a big reason why I have the career that I have, and I'm so fortunate for those opportunities. But I never really dug into what it meant to be Asian or what it meant to be from Korea. And on the one hand, I guess that sort of ignorance is bliss has been, a blessing, because I haven't, walked through life with that lens on, if you will. On the other hand, when there are moments like this, and the pandemic actually has brought some of those issues to the fore, I can't empathize or connect with the same kind of comments or questions and articles I read about sort of the backlash against Asian Americans in certain parts of this country, given the virus starting in, at least as they indicate, starting in China. And so my challenges from an identity standpoint, Tolu, are more, I think, internal than external, in that I don't recall any, major explicit or overt discrimination. I'm sure it has happened to me, and it just like flew over my head, or I just didn't understand it. But it certainly wasn't very forceful in my face, and made me to a point where it made me feel uncomfortable. So I think that's a difference that I bring based on my background, my ethnicity, and my race compared to others. And such as a person like you who has a different experience. We're all different people, even if we're the same color. We all have different experiences, and I think that's the perspective I bring, for better or worse, and that's how I think just what has led me to be where I am today.
Okay, thank you. So let's talk a little bit about your student athlete life. You were a two-time captain at the University of Wisconsin on a softball team. So were you always interested in sports? I know when we talked a little bit, you mentioned all the different sports that you played. So if you could talk a little bit about that.
I was always interested in sports. It's the one thing I remember very crisply from my childhood, is going out to the driveway and shooting hoops, or going to the softball field and hitting at least first off a tee and playing t-ball. So those memories are very vivid for me as a child. And I played, as I always consider myself like I was a really good athlete, but I wasn't great or exceptional in any given sport. And that's why when you're 5'2", I know you can't all see that here, but when you're 5'2", as I often say, you have to be exceptional in something from an athletics perspective to play Division I. And I just didn't. I wasn't that person. But that didn't stop me from my love for sports. I played three sports in high school, and then I went to the University of Wisconsin at lacrosse and had the chance to play softball. And so I did it, because why not? Why not continue playing?
Right.
Doing something that you love for as long as you can. And so that's my experience as a student. But I definitely remember sports being the center of my life for as long as I can remember, both playing it and then just being a fan. I grew up in Minnesota, so my family was a baseball family, if you will. So listening to the Minnesota Twins on the radio, we went to a few games, but mostly listened to the games on the radio, which, as I say, that seems like a real throwback. It may be a little bit. But those are the good times I remember, in terms of being active, playing with my friends, but then also as a way to spend time, particularly with my grandparents, who were the big Twins fans in our family.
Okay, so I was a former student athlete as well. I played basketball at UCF. So this is the first year where I'm not an athlete. So it's kind of like, So as a former student athlete, how was your transition from being a student athlete to now becoming an adult?
Yeah, it was hard at first. I mean, let's be honest, and I'm sure you're experiencing some of that too in your first year. When you go from playing sports as, let's say I started maybe when I was 5 or 6 years old, to when I was 22 and I graduated from college. Again, as I mentioned before, that was the one constant in my life. And we don't have that in an organized way. It's an emotional loss. There's just an adjustment to real life and being an adult and having to go to work and have a schedule and manage life that way. So it was, I'm not going to lie and say that was super easy, because anytime you have loss like that, I think it is a loss, and you
Right.
sort of mourn that in sort of way. But you also get a chance to celebrate it. I think I finished my senior year on a good note. I have the right mentality going into your senior year, so you really soak up all of the final experiences that you have, and then you move into life. But I definitely think that playing sports particularly playing a team sport, was really helpful for me and continues to be helpful for me today in terms of, managing a schedule, but mostly learning how to communicate, deal with loss and disappointment, and knowing that you can always keep working to do better. That's what sports is
For
about.
sure.
Very few people win every single game, hit every shot that they take, hit a home run or get a base hit on every at bat. And so you learn to deal with failure to a certain extent, but still find success and be able to feel good and confident, even if you have those moments where you're not getting on base every day.
Right. So you just mentioned time management, team sports. So what were some of the lessons that you picked up from all of this and that you still follow till this day as your role?
For me, it was, as it adapted, to my personality and my leadership style, is to be, steady. I I am not, the most boisterous person. I never was the most boisterous leader or captain of my team. I wasn't the get in the huddle and give a fiery speech and rally everyone up. I was the steady person, steady leader, and I still am today. And so that's something that I was able to cultivate and develop when I was a student athlete. And, I think it works so far. It's been working fairly well so far. So that's definitely something. And then, just like I said, communicating, learning to deal with different people, people who may like things differently than you, who may just look at a problem a lot differently than you. When you're on a team, and for me, like on a softball team, it didn't really matter at the end of the day what those other 8 players on my team did outside of their time. When we were together, we were there to win a softball game and to run a play or do whatever. And I think that lesson applies here in the workforce. I don't
Right.
Doesn't mean you have to be best friends with everyone that you work with, or on a smaller team, but you need to know what the goal is, the objective is, and figure out how to motivate people and get everyone to contribute. And that's definitely something that is beneficial from my time playing sports to today.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. So let's talk a little bit about your commissioner role. So growing up as a female, you usually hear things like how women are too sensitive or emotional, and you usually see males in these higher positions. So as a woman in a minority, how are you breaking through that glass ceiling?
I ignore a lot of that stuff, Tolu, and it
Yeah.
makes me frustrated, and I get, as angry as I can get. I get bothered by it. I don't like it. I don't like reading those articles day in and day out about women and their perceptions of women. And that's not to say that I don't have those moments or experiences in my life. We all do. No one's perfect. But that is not the right mindset, I believe, to go through life, to be always sort of in a less than dominant position. I think women are more confident than they often express. And I think they need to show up and stand up and do and express that more often, so that we don't have the comments or perceptions floating around. And there's a struggle. Certainly people have limitations, as you mentioned, like a lot of the people still today, in every industry, the hiring decisions are made by men. And so that's an obvious constraint that we've got to figure out, but that shouldn't limit you from giving it your best shot. And I don't like the perception of, women, or the comment or thing that some people say, women are always seeking permission. That bothers me. Like, why are we doing that as a gender? We are just as smart and confident and capable as anyone else, as any other gender in this world, and we're not going to get everything that we ask for.
Right.
But we got to ask for it, and we got to show up and not be afraid to fail, not be afraid to be disappointed. We just roll with it. You learn from every experience, positive or negative. And I really believe that confidence and self-awareness and those kind of things are so important for women. And I wish I'm optimistic in the generations behind me, because I think they are more innately gifted with some of those things based on the environments that they grow up. And so I'm optimistic that that's going to continue as we go forward.
Yeah. And like you said, it's usually trying to, block everything and all the things that they're saying about women. And that's what we say, blocking out the haters. You got to block out the haters sometimes, like that, Amy. So can you also talk about the different diversity and inclusion programs that you're a part of, and where did it all start?
Yeah, that's one of I think the things that I'm most proud of in my time as being commissioner of the America East is the chance to lead and to lead on areas and initiatives that I'm passionate about. And certainly we still, at the end of the day, work for our membership. And so they have identified, diversity and inclusion as a priority for them. And that's one of the reasons why, I feel lucky to work for this league and in the 9 schools that are in our league. But it really started with our student athletes, as a lot of things do and should. Our student athletes back in 2012, I think, so my second year, roughly, the environment in this country for around LGBTQ issues was not in a good place then. It was growing, and we're certainly better today, even in 2020, than we were in 2013, even though we're not perfect today. But that was an issue that our student athletes identified as something they wanted to learn more about and be better allies and support their fellow teammates, because they saw them struggling. For those student athletes who were exploring their identity, or who were just not comfortable being themselves. And so we partnered with the You Can Play project back in 2013, as we were one of the first conferences to do that. And that evolved to a partnership with LGBT Sports Safe over the years. And then, as things in our society here in this country changed with elections and things of that nature, other issues have come to the fore, and it has exposed and other tensions have become more visible in both sometimes really negative ways, but I think also in some positive ways. If you can, if there are silver linings, it's bringing some issues to the fore that we need to talk about as a country. And I was really proud of our student athletes for identifying some of those things, like racism, like social justice, as things they want to be discussed in our league. And so that's where our diversity and inclusion effort shifted a couple of years ago to a broader Spread Respect campaign to tackle all of these different things, from LGBTQ issues to racism to social justice to any sort of dimension of diversity that is out there, and have a conversation with it. So we partnered with RISE a couple of years ago to help us with some tools and education in that space. So that's sort of a description of our Spread Respect campaign, Tolu, and that's, again, it's driven by our student athletes, but importantly also supported by our coaches, supported by our athletics directors at all 9 of our schools.
Okay, thank you. So before we take some questions, Amy, are there any last minute advice that you would like to give for all the women out there? Sorry to the males, I'm sorry. Thank y'all for tuning in. But is there any advice out there for all the ladies out there?
I mean, I think if you're still in school or you're still early in your career, it's just, take advantage of the network of people around you. And I think one thing that this pandemic has showed us is the value of people, because we're not around them anymore. And so, when you're on campus, and hopefully you'll be able to go back to campus, connect with faculty, connect with staff. If you're a student athlete, connect with your coaches in ways other than just the X's and O's of your sport, because those are the people that want to help you and will help propel you to whatever's next. I know that was my experience in connecting with administrators when I was a student athlete, and I'm confident that I would not be in the position I am today without my reaching out and taking initiative to identify some mentors in my life. And so that's one thing. And then the second thing is just remain curious, be open to learning, be open to constructive criticism for other people. We are all a work in progress every single day, whether you're 22 or 42 or 62. Don't ever settle and be complacent. Continue to learn and grow and develop. And I think that's how you get through life. I think clearly things happen to our world and to us individually that we can't predict. And if you're not, continuing to adapt and learn, I think you're going to find yourself in a tough spot sometimes.
Right. Thank you, Amy, for that. Now we'll see what questions we have for you.
I have 2 questions for you. The first question comes from Alyssa Gates. And Alyssa is asking, what suggestions do you have for those of us trying to get our own athletic conference to take a social justice issue as you have in the American East?
Yeah, I think I can tell you how it worked for us, and which was really powerful, is through our conference SAC. That's where that conversation happened. And it's hard as the student athlete voice has an influence, has continued to grow from a governance structure perspective within different conferences and within the NCAA. Having that discussion at SAC and forwarding any recommendation on to your administrators, that's how it worked for our league. And so I don't imagine, I think that can happen in any conference. So that's the pathway that I would at least initially recommend.
We have a question from Matt Edelson. He's asking, can Amy talk about the importance of building new skills throughout her work career and the new skills she's learned after she graduated?
Yeah, I definitely can. So I was fortunate, I think, very fortunate to have entered the profession or the world, my work life when I did, because while it was competitive to work in college sports back in '99 when I graduated, it's a lot more competitive today. You know, and I say that because I got an internship and started working without any advanced degree and with little experience. I got my experience as I went. And so I went for a number of years without having a master's degree or anything else like that. I had a couple of attempts along the way, and you know, jobs took me in other directions. And so a few years ago, I realized, you know, I'm still, you know, generally relatively young. I have a long career ahead of me, and I need to keep learning. I need to keep, you know, adding some skills to my tool belt, if you will, and getting sharper in the ones that I had. And so that's when I decided to go pursue an MBA. And I was fortunate that I live in Boston, where there are, you know, a wealth of institutions around, and there was an executive MBA program at MIT that I was fortunate enough to get into. And that just, you know, opened my aperture in 1,000 different directions, from the people that I met, but then just from the courses and skills of things that I learned about how the real world works. You know, college athletics is wonderful and higher education is wonderful, but that's the only experience that I had. And as I alluded to earlier, continue to grow and be curious. It was important for me personally to learn about the rest of the world outside of college athletics and see what things I could bring in to our industry or into our conference. And so I think if that can sort of illustrate a point of how at least I have tried to always continue to learn and grow, even though I'm in a position that people retire from. You know, it was important for me to not take my foot off the gas just yet.
Thank you for that. We have time for just one more question. There's more questions that are coming in the queue. And for those who didn't get their question responded to here, we will make sure that we follow up with you and have Amy answer your question. But this question comes from Emily Kelly. And her question is what advice do you have for minorities in predominantly white athletic departments who take on most, if not all, of the diversity and inclusion work?
Yeah, that is a tough one. And that is certainly not a unique experience, unfortunately. You know, I think there are white coaches, administrators who want to be champions and allies, and just seek them out. Listen for cues. If it's not, you know, people aren't going to have a sign walking around, I'm sure, but listen, have conversations with people, even on a just get to know you, like coffee chat basis. And those things will come out. You'll see who values diversity and inclusion and who might be able to be helpful to you as an ally or as a champion, and then build the community that way. I think that's the best. That's at least one. I don't know if it's the best way, but that's one way I definitely recommend, because it should not be left to only those people who identify in a certain way to build that community. But there are really good people out there in this world, and there are people who want to help and sometimes don't know how to or where to go. And so I think just reaching out, having conversations with people, and again, I think that their values and principles will start to come forward as you get to know them.
Well, thank you so much, Amy, for speaking with us. Again, it was a pleasure. This was Amy, Commissioner of the America East Conference. So thank you for those who have tuned in for our first episode. That is what I'm talking about. I'm clapping for you guys. Woo, 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 woo. So now join us for our next episode, Thursday, May 14th at 2 p.m. And May 14th, that's my birthday. I'm not going to tell y'all how old I am. Not going to tell y'all, but so I'll be speaking with Jasmine Green, Director of the Intercollegiate and Intramural Athletics at Harry S. Truman College in Chicago. Again, I'm your host for our Invisible Woman in Sports, and we'll also like to thank our guests once more time. Amy, thank you again.
Thank you,
No problem. Our producer, Garnett Overby, and our advising consultant, Matt Elderson. Also, special thanks to all of the organizations that registered We really appreciate you, and we thank you for everyone who registered again. Hope to see you guys soon on May 14th at 2 p.m. Also, follow us on our social media. On Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. We're not on Snapchat, but we're on everything else. So follow us there on Institute at SSJ. So see y'all next time, May 14th at 2 p.m. Put it in your calendar, okay? Thank you, Amy.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Waves, waves. See us now.